Most men don't fall behind because they're incapable. They fall behind because they're overly invested in being approved of. Sit with that. You can be sharp, educated, experienced, and still lose leverage because you crave acceptance. Being liked feels smooth. It feels intelligent. It feels socially aware. It feels grown. But approval and respect are not the same currency. If you trade respect for approval, you don't notice the loss immediately. It happens quietly. Gradually. You begin adjusting yourself for people who are less disciplined than you but more strategic. The agreeable man diffuses pressure. He clarifies before he's questioned. He softens his delivery so no one feels exposed. He apologizes to prevent discomfort. He edits himself in real time. The strategic man operates differently. He studies tension instead of dissolving it. He allows silence to stretch. He understands that discomfort reveals structure. Here is the truth most men resist. What you call kindness is often avoidance dressed as virtue. It is fear wearing the mask of maturity. Fear of disapproval. Fear of conflict. Fear of being judged. Fear of losing social standing. You convince yourself you are balanced, reasonable, evolved. But ask a harder question. Are you wise, or are you just avoiding resistance? The agreeable man escapes pressure. The strategic man uses it. That is the dividing line. If I observed you in a room for 10 minutes, I would not need your resume. I would not need your title. I would not need your achievements. I would watch how quickly you adapt your tone. How fast you rush to fill silence. How often you justify yourself. How quickly you defend when challenged. From that alone, I could calculate your positioning. So consider this carefully. Who profits from your need to be liked? You, or the people who probe you, test you, and map your predictability? Predictability comforts others. But unpredictability introduces caution. And caution is the beginning of respect. Let me be precise. This is not an invitation to become harsh. It is not a call to aggression. It is not about turning cold or hostile. This is calibration. It is the shift from emotional reflex to strategic awareness. Your personality is not the problem. Your positioning is. Machiavelli understood a principle most modern men ignore. Power does not respond to intention. It responds to perception. It responds to access. It responds to timing. Direct perception, control access, master timing, and you control the frame. In this video, you will learn 7 psychological recalibrations that move you from approval dependent to position aware. These are not productivity hacks. Not surface level advice. These are structural adjustments in how you speak, pause, respond, and design your reputation. 7 recalibrations that increase leverage without hostility. 7 distinctions that separate the agreeable from the influential. 7 shifts that turn niceness into measured, deliberate, strategically dangerous composure. Before we go further, anchor this mindset. Type this in the comments. I choose leverage. Now we begin. Stop chasing psychological safety. There is a quiet dependency most men never question. It is not addiction to pleasure. It is not addiction to money. It is addiction to comfort in interaction. The desire for conversations to stay smooth. The desire for rooms to feel light. The desire for every exchange to close without tension. It feels responsible. It feels socially intelligent. But it erodes influence. When you prioritize comfort over positioning, you condition yourself to contract. You avoid statements that may challenge someone. You dilute truths that require precision. You hesitate before setting boundaries because you anticipate friction. And every time you do, you reinforce a pattern. You elevate emotional ease above strategic advantage. High-value men understand something different. Discomfort is not danger. It is diagnostic. Tension exposes hierarchy. It exposes confidence. It exposes who stands firm when pressure rises. The moment an interaction tightens, most men rush to relieve it. They laugh it off. They clarify excessively. They overcorrect. They apologize. They dilute their stance. In doing so, they lower their perceived weight. The man who remains steady when pressure rises sets the emotional climate of the room. When someone challenges you directly, what happens internally? Do you react instantly? Do you rush to justify? Do you scramble to neutralize the tension? Or do you pause, maintain eye contact, and allow silence to settle long enough to register authority? Psychological safety is often avoidance in disguise. But leverage is built through managed risk. When you allow friction to exist without scrambling to smooth it over, dynamics shift. People reassess. They recalibrate. They measure their words more carefully. Not because you became aggressive. Not because you raised your voice. But because you did not retreat. Influence often sits on the other side of discomfort. You must train your nervous system to withstand that edge. The tightening in the air when you speak directly. The pause after you disagree. The stillness after you draw a line. These are not threats to your image. They are investments in your authority. Comfort-seeking keeps you agreeable. Advantage-seeking earns respect. This does not mean manufacturing conflict. It means refusing to escape it prematurely. It means understanding that growth requires controlled exposure to tension. When you stop trying to make every environment pleasant, you become grounded. And grounded men are difficult to move. Be honest with yourself. How many times have you withheld a necessary statement to keep things light? How many times have you laughed off something that required correction? How often have you chosen temporary harmony over long-term positioning? Each time, you preserved short-term peace and surrendered long-term leverage. That ends here. From this point forward, you operate differently. You do not pursue comfort. You evaluate outcomes. If allowing brief discomfort increases clarity, you allow it. If holding steady strengthens your position, you hold. This is not aggression. It is composure under pressure. When you no longer require every interaction to feel safe, people begin approaching you with care. And careful treatment is the foundation of respect. Second shift. Remove your dependence on instant approval. There is a force more influential than logic, stronger than discipline, quieter than ambition. It is the urge to be validated in the moment. The need for agreement right now. The subtle hunger for nods, smiles, quick reassurance. It feels natural. It feels social. It feels harmless. But when that impulse governs your behavior, you are no longer choosing your moves. You are waiting for permission. Short-term approval feels rewarding. It smooths tension. It gives you belonging. It creates the illusion of connection. But reliance on approval makes you flexible in the wrong way. And men who are easily adjusted are easily positioned. When you require positive feedback immediately, your clarity weakens. You round off strong statements to avoid resistance. You reshape opinions to match the dominant voice in the room. You hesitate before challenging someone with status. You measure your words by predicted reaction instead of strategic alignment. Influence cannot expand inside a constant search for affirmation. Strategic men understand something most overlook. Respect often arrives late. Authority rarely feels comfortable at first. When you speak with conviction, some will resist. When you enforce standards, some will withdraw. When you refuse to bend for instant harmony, some will feel exposed. That is not rejection. That is filtration. The craving for immediate approval makes you transparent. Others quickly decode your pattern. They learn what earns your approval, What triggers your retreat? What makes you soften? Once your emotional levers are mapped, your leverage decreases. Detachment from instant validation changes your physical presence. You stop scanning faces for signs of agreement. You stop recalibrating your tone to earn acceptance. You stop measuring your worth by how quickly others respond positively. Instead, you measure by positioning. A powerful shift occurs when you accept being temporarily misunderstood. When you state your position clearly and allow others to sit with it. When you resist the urge to over-explain to repair your image. When you prioritize long-term perception over short-term applause. That is maturity. Long-term positioning demands tolerance for brief discomfort. The man who can withstand a moment of social friction without scrambling to regain approval slowly builds authority. Be honest. How often do you read the room before you speak? How often do you adjust delivery to avoid pushback? How often does disagreement unsettle you? Each reaction reveals where validation still has influence over you. Freedom begins when agreement becomes optional. When you release the need for immediate endorsement, your internal structure changes. You become measured, centered, intentional. You stop trading standards for applause. You begin operating from alignment rather than reaction. And this is where the paradox appears. The less you chase reassurance, the more respect you receive. People trust men who do not fish for affirmation. They rely on those who hold steady even when silence follows their words. They respect those who can maintain a position calmly without scrambling to smooth it over. You are not here to collect universal approval. You are here to build leverage. Anchor that now. Write this in the comments. I don't chase approval. When validation no longer drives your decisions, your presence shifts. And when your presence shifts, responses shift with it. Third shift. Replace reaction with delay. Many men believe speed equals strength. They think immediate answers signal intelligence. They assume fast comebacks demonstrate dominance. In reality, instant reactions often reveal emotional exposure. When someone challenges you and you respond instantly, you reveal your wiring. When pressure rises and you react without pause, you surrender control of timing. Timing is leverage. The one who controls tempo influences direction. Impulsive responses are easy to predict. They reveal triggers. They expose pressure points. They show exactly where influence can be applied. If someone knows they can provoke an instant reply, they know they can steer you. Introducing delay interrupts that control. A pause creates uncertainty. An uncertainty alters psychological balance. The other person begins questioning their own statement. They replay their words internally. Silence becomes reflective surface. This is not passivity. It is calibrated pacing. Recall the last time someone made a bold claim in front of you. Did you jump in immediately? Did you rush to defend your position? Did you try to prove something on the spot? That urgency may have felt powerful, but it likely reduced your authority. Strategic delay accomplishes three outcomes at once. First, it gives you distance. You observe from above rather than reacting from inside the moment. You assess tone, intention, and subtext. You choose a response aligned with outcome, not emotion. Second, it transfers psychological weight outward. When you remain silent briefly, the other person fills the gap mentally. Doubt can surface. Curiosity can grow. Sometimes insecurity appears. Third, it reinforces composure. Controlled timing communicates internal stability. It signals that you are not easily moved. Most people operate on reflex. They answer messages immediately. They defend instantly. They react to criticism without pause. They decide under pressure without space. And because of that speed, they are predictable. Introduce measured delay and you become less readable. This does not mean ignoring responsibilities. It means deciding when to engage. It means resisting the urge to relieve tension immediately. It means allowing moments to breathe. Imagine someone questions your competence publicly. Instead of reacting, you hold eye contact. You allow the room to feel the pause. Then you respond calmly, directly, without emotional charge. That measured delivery carries more authority than any rapid rebuttal. Control over timing is control over frame. When you determine when interaction advances, you shape its structure. When you decide when to respond, you guide momentum. When you refuse to be rushed, you reclaim authority. Ask yourself directly: how often do you feel compelled to answer immediately? How often does silence create discomfort in you? How often does urgency dictate your behavior? Urgency is conditioning. Conditioning can be redesigned. From this point forward, practice intentional pacing. Before you answer, breathe. Before you reply, evaluate. Before you react, assess consequence. Not every statement deserves instant energy. The more deliberately you move, the harder you are to manipulate. Write this in the comments. I control the tempo. When you stop reacting on impulse and begin responding with strategy, the dynamic shifts. You are no longer defending position. You are directing rhythm. Fourth move. Redesign what kindness actually means. Somewhere along the way, being a good man became confused with being endlessly available. You were taught that generosity should run on autopilot, that patience should have no edge, that understanding should be handed out like free samples. Compassion matters. But compassion without boundaries quietly erodes authority. When you offer the same warmth to the disciplined and the careless, to the loyal and the opportunistic, you blur the lines that define standards. When everyone receives equal access to you regardless of behavior, consequences disappear. And when consequences disappear, respect fades with them. Men who understand power treat generosity like an investment, not a reflex. If your time, focus, and backing can be accessed by anyone at any hour, they stop feeling rare. And what is common is rarely valued. Imagine your energy as a private room, not a public park. If the door is always open, people wander in casually. If entry requires alignment, behavior shifts. When someone is certain you will always forgive, always accommodate, always absorb inconvenience, they stop earning your support. It becomes an entitlement. An entitlement kills appreciation. Selective kindness reshapes the frame. When your encouragement is directed with intention, it carries weight. When your patience has limits, it commands respect. When your support is given to those who demonstrate effort and integrity, it strengthens your position. This is not about becoming cold or cynical. It is about becoming precise. Audit your energy. Who truly deserves your time? Who consistently meets your standards? Who protects your name when you are not in the room? And who drains your focus without contributing anything in return? If your kindness operates automatically, it is not strategic. It is conditioning. High-level men distribute resources based on contribution. They reward consistency. They reinforce loyalty. They elevate those who show discipline under pressure. But they do not continue pouring into individuals who repeatedly ignore boundaries or test limits. When your generosity becomes selective, awareness increases around you. People begin to calculate their behavior. They sense that your attention is not infinite. They understand that access to you is connected to alignment. And that understanding creates structure. Unlimited niceness produces comfort. Structured generosity produces order. Order produces authority. Think back. How many times did you extend patience long after it was deserved? How often did you keep supporting someone who gave you half effort? How frequently did you tolerate subtle disrespect because you did not want to appear harsh? Each time you did, you trained others to expect more than they earned. Selective generosity corrects that imbalance. When someone shows discipline, reinforce it. When someone acts with integrity, acknowledge it. When someone aligns with your code, invest in them. But when someone violates your standards, reduce access calmly. No anger. No speeches. Just distance. That is not retaliation. That is positioning. Your time is finite. Your attention is finite. Your energy is finite. Treat them like capital, not charity. The moment people realize your backing must be earned, their posture changes. Their tone changes. Their effort changes because now there is something at stake. Write this and internalize it. My energy is earned. When kindness becomes intentional instead of automatic, you stop being overlooked. And once you are no longer taken for granted, your presence becomes heavier in every room. Fifth move. Master the art of unfinished edges. Most men feel uneasy when something is left unresolved. They want every debate wrapped neatly, every disagreement cleared immediately, every silence filled. That urge feels responsible. It is actually revealing. The craving for closure exposes attachment. When you rush to clarify every misunderstanding, you show that you need emotional completion. When you over-explain to protect your image, you reveal dependence on perception. When you chase final answers, you drain intrigue. And intrigue is leverage. Not every comment deserves a detailed explanation. Not every challenge requires a breakdown. Not every doubtful look requires reassurance. Strategic restraint creates gravity. When you leave certain threads untied, the conversation continues in the other person's mind long after you exit. They replay your words. They dissect your tone. They attempt to decode your intention. That mental replay increases your significance. When everything is clarified instantly, the moment dies instantly. There is nothing left to process. A controlled absence of explanation keeps you present. This is not deception. It is discipline. It is understanding that silence can amplify impact more than paragraphs ever could. Picture this. Someone questions your decision in front of others. Instead of launching into a detailed defense, you answer briefly, calmly, decisively. Then you stop. You let the stillness sit. You do not scramble to justify yourself further. Their curiosity does the work for you. That pause shifts the power dynamic. Most people expect full transparency to the point of self-exposure. They expect you to relieve their discomfort by explaining every layer of your reasoning. You are not obligated to soothe their uncertainty. Leaving certain things unsaid signals confidence. It communicates that you are stable enough to let perception evolve without micromanaging it. Overclarification often grows from insecurity. The need to make sure everyone understands you perfectly. The need to prevent any possible misinterpretation. The need to protect reputation in real time. But controlled ambiguity forces others to lean toward you rather than you leaning toward them. Ask yourself, how often do you send an extra message to make sure your point was clear? How often do you feel tension when a conversation ends without complete agreement? How often do you try to fix silence instead of using it? That discomfort is training ground. The man who can walk away from a discussion without chasing immediate resolution carries influence. He understands that perception shifts slowly. He trusts his positioning. He allows curiosity to build instead of dissolving it. When you resist the urge to over-explain, you prevent dilution. You become more difficult to label, more difficult to predict, more difficult to control. And when people cannot fully map you, they move with greater care. Say it and believe it. I embrace mystery. When you stop obsessing over closure and allow space to exist, your words echo longer. Your silence stretches further. Your presence lingers after you have left. Sixth move. Treat every interaction as an exchange of leverage. Most men think they are simply talking. In reality, every exchange subtly adjusts hierarchy. Every conversation nudges positioning. Every moment either lifts you slightly or lowers you slightly. The shift may be subtle, almost invisible, but over time it compounds. Status is rarely decided in explosive confrontations. It is shaped in everyday interactions. When you begin to view conversations as transfers of influence rather than neutral chatter, your awareness sharpens. You notice what others miss. Who initiates? Who interrupts? Who changes tone first? Who laughs too quickly? Who shifts posture? These micro signals reveal balance. Influence is not always about overpowering someone. It is about who invests more effort. Who is pushing harder for approval? Who is explaining more? Who is adapting constantly to maintain comfort? Who is holding steady? If you repeatedly invest more energy than the other person, more enthusiasm, more reassurance, more elaboration, you gradually position yourself beneath them. Power often moves toward the individual who is less reactive, less needy, less eager to fill space. When you slow your responses, maintain composure, and conserve energy, you alter the exchange. Conversations stop being casual moments and start becoming calculated terrain. And the man who understands the terrain chooses where he stands before he ever speaks. When one side invests more, the balance tilts. And when the balance tilts, perception follows. Men who think strategically sense this without needing it spelled out. They watch closely. Is the other person proving their value, or are you the only one qualifying yourself? Are they asking questions that show interest, or are you carrying the entire exchange? Is respect mutual, or are you giving more than you receive? The moment they detect uneven effort, they adjust. Not with drama. Not with speeches. With calibration. Calibration is subtle. If someone monopolizes the conversation, you don't compete for volume. You become concise and observe whether they notice the shift. If someone cuts you off repeatedly, you don't snap. You hold your frame, keep eye contact, and continue speaking as if interruption is irrelevant. If someone expects constant access to you, you narrow availability and watch how they respond. Each small adjustment rebalances the scale. Review your interactions today. Did you mirror their tone to win comfort? Did you push harder to keep momentum alive? Did you stretch your energy further than they did? That information is not trivial. It is data. When you operate consciously, you stop leaking influence in tiny, invisible amounts. At the same time, you learn to recognize healthy exchanges. When someone respects your time, contributes equally, listens with intention, and values your perspective, you reinforce that connection. Balanced dynamics create stable authority. Uneven ones quietly assign rank. There is a deeper element beneath behavior. Energy. After a conversation ends, who lingers in your mind? Who leaves you feeling depleted? Who sharpens you, challenges you, strengthens you? If someone consistently drains you, the exchange is misaligned. If someone leaves you clearer and more focused, the structure is healthier. Real power is not loud. It is composed. The man who stays centered while others overextend becomes the anchor point in the room. Not because he demanded attention, but because he conserved and directed his energy with intention. From this moment forward, walk into conversations with awareness, not suspicion. Awareness. Observe patterns without reacting emotionally. Measure dynamics without insecurity. Adjust quietly, without theatrics. When you see social interaction as terrain that can be navigated, you stop stumbling through it blindly. You stop handing away influence without noticing. And as you manage exchanges deliberately, your position strengthens naturally. When balance becomes your lens, you are no longer moved unconsciously. You begin to move with purpose. And purposeful movement builds authority that appears effortless, even though it is carefully constructed. Seventh move. Architect your reputation. If you do not define how you are seen, others will define it for you. And once a narrative settles around your name, it shapes every future interaction. Reputation is not forged in one dramatic event. It is assembled piece by piece. In how you react under pressure. In the standards you enforce. In the standards you ignore. In the tone you choose. In the boundaries you defend. Most men drift through this process passively. They assume their intentions are obvious. They hope consistency alone will communicate who they are. But perception does not organize itself. It is shaped. Strategic men understand that image is leverage. Not a mask. Not deception. Controlled signaling. Before you enter any room, decide the psychological effect you want to leave behind. Do you want to be experienced as agreeable or decisive? Easygoing or exacting? Relaxed or formidable? You cannot embody every trait simultaneously. The attempt to be universally like dilutes impact. Reputation is stored memory. When people see that you remain composed under pressure, they challenge you less. When they know you enforce boundaries calmly, they hesitate before crossing them. When they recognize that you speak with intention, they listen differently. This does not happen by accident. It happens because your behavior aligns with the identity you are building. One public tolerance of disrespect becomes a reference point. One emotional outburst becomes part of your file. Repeated approval seeking becomes your label. Every action feeds the profile people construct in their minds. Designing your reputation means thinking beyond the immediate moment. Before reacting, ask yourself, what does this teach others about my standards? Before accepting behavior, ask, what precedent am I setting? Consistency is the foundation. If you are composed today and volatile tomorrow, people test you to discover which version they will encounter. Predictable strength generates caution. Unpredictable mood invites experimentation. There is also power in restraint. If you are known for measured responses, your rare moments of intensity carry force. If you are known for discipline, your silence communicates more than someone else's shouting. Over time, this pattern solidifies. People adjust before you even speak. They anticipate your expectations. They calculate their behavior in advance. That is reputation operating on your behalf. Guard it carefully. Avoid impulsive choices that contradict the man you are constructing. Avoid emotional reactions that fracture the image you are reinforcing. Avoid short-term satisfaction that weakens long-term authority. Reputation compounds like interest. Once established, it reduces the need for constant correction. It lowers resistance. It increases influence without additional effort. Ask yourself honestly. If someone described you in 3 words, what would they say? And do those words match the leader you intend to become? If not, the redesign begins now. Write this and mean it. I shape perception. When you consciously engineer how you are experienced, you stop leaving influence to randomness. And when influence is no longer random, leadership stops being a wish and starts becoming a pattern. You have just completed 7 internal recalibrations. You shifted from comfort-seeking to tolerating tension. From chasing validation to standing in alignment. From reacting instantly to controlling tempo. From automatic generosity to intentional investment. From over-explaining to allowing space. From unconscious exchanges to balanced dynamics. From accidental identity to constructed reputation. This is the difference between drifting socially and positioning strategically. Nice tries to survive the room. Smart learns to shape it. Understand this clearly. None of these shifts require aggression. None require hostility. None require you to become someone artificial. They require discipline. Discipline in speech. Discipline in timing. Discipline in energy. Discipline in identity. When you stop performing niceness out of fear and begin moving with calculated intention, the environment changes. People sense it. They recalibrate. Not because you demanded respect, but because your structure commands it. Most men will hear this, feel inspired, and then under pressure revert to habit. Do not let insight fade into routine. Change is not built on understanding alone. It is built on repetition. Practice these principles until they become instinct. If this message sharpened your awareness, support the channel, share it with a man who needs it, and commit to applying it. Stop being nice to avoid conflict. Start being strategic to create influence.